They're passing out the handouts. There's a 2-page handout again today. Well, lesson 8, Genesis chapter 12. Let's go back and do a quick review of where we are just to get us up with our study for the quarter. First section we looked at was before the flood. 5 chapters involved in that, Genesis 1 through 5, the creation, Adam and Eve in the garden, first sin, and then Cain and Abel, and then the generations chapter 5, getting us up to the time of Noah. And then the next section was the flood, chapter 6 through 10, basically 6, the wickedness of the world, preparation of the ark, 7, the flood begins, dry land. Chapter 9 is that chapter has some laws in it about not eating blood, capital punishment, rainbow promise. Those in chapter 9. Chapter 10 again is kind of a fast forward type chapter. We call it the generations, getting us up to the time headed toward Abraham. And then last time we looked at chapter 11, a little 1-chapter piece on the scattering of the people. Run through the review on that right quick for a little bit, and then we'll get into chapter 12 and start the study for this morning. Chapter 11, the people decided to build a tower to reach to heaven. The reason for that was they wanted to make a name for themselves. We talked about the pride involved in that and making a name for themselves as opposed to worshiping God. They had brick, they had stones for brick, they had tar for mortars, they had to build a tower from that standpoint. We talked about being in the plain of Shinar down in the Mesopotamia Valley, which was a big part of the Bible story during this time. But the Lord came down to visit them and to see what was going on. He knew what was going on. The city came down to see there. And people were all speaking one language at this time. And so God said, let us, use that expression again we saw back in chapter 1, let us make man in our image. He said, let us go down and confuse their language. They would not understand each other. They'd be confusing. They could speak to each other. And I mean, every individual had a different language, but they'd be groups. And so they would scatter out over the earth. Go back to Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. When they first came out of the ark, they were told then to multiply, replenish the earth. And so this is God getting that done by confusing their language, making them scatter out. So they stopped building the city then. The place is called Babel. A couple of different definitions of the word there. When we usually think about it, it comes from the Hebrew word means to jumble or confuse the language there. The city of Babel. Somebody say babbler today. Then we got into talking about, introduced Abraham, the last part of chapter 11 there, getting down to the family tree there of Abraham. We talked about Terah, his father, and then we introduced 3 of the sons, Abraham, Abram at this point it is known as, and Nahor and Haran being the 3 brothers here. Abraham, of course, here's the thing here. Abraham married Sarai, his half-sister. We'll get to that today, talk about that. And then Lot comes into the picture, which is Haran's son, Abraham's nephew. And we'll see him with him during our whole class session today as we get to that. So get this family tree in your mind. We're going to be taking off on it in several different angles and during the next several weeks as we go through this. So Lot was the son of Haran. Terah, Abraham's father. Terah took Abram and Sarai and Lot and moved up from into Haran, or Haran is pronounced sometimes. We do call it Haran. They stopped to live there. And Haran's a city. It's also the name of Abraham's brother, right? Abram's brother, so we'll get too confused there. And Terah, Abraham's father, died in the city of Haran. So he leaves him there with that. And that's the path generally there from down in the lower Mesopotamia Valley, up through the Euphrates River Valley, up to the city of Haran. Going around the desert, what we call the Fertile Crescent, up through there. They moved through that. So that's where we kind of left them off last time, was in Haran. Go through that. So we talked about this verse here, the obedience of Abraham by faith. Uh, God makes promises. I was thinking about those Wednesday night, if you were here for our singing. God's promises. God makes promises. People of old acted on these faith. It wasn't just I have faith and I believe, that's it. There was action involved there. And the question we ask is God made me a promise. Am I going to act on my faith to see that promise fulfilled by my obedient actions? Not producing works, but works that are obedient because it's based on the faith we have in God. So that's where we left off last time. So we've covered 3 of the 17 periods of our Bible history we talk about. The Bible narrative before the flood, the scattering of the people, the first 11 chapters. Now then, we're getting into a long section here. And we start the section of the patriarchs, which is going to cover Genesis 12 through 50, the rest of the book and the rest of this quarter. Then the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We'll get into Joseph down at the end of it, which is the link that gets us into Egypt to get us ready for the next period as they come out of Egypt and then go down to Mount Sinai. But this time we'll spend Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the 3 patriarchs there. So, getting involved, starting in chapter 12 now. Chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord told Abraham, get out of your country, away from your family, and from your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. So let's just look at that verse just a minute. Think about us for a minute. I think Abraham and it related to us a little bit. Told Abraham, get out of your country. Now, no jet airplanes, no fast cars. Abraham had probably never been to Canaan. Or we know, it's a very reasonable assumption at least. Don't know that, but a reasonable assumption because travel wasn't like it is now. So he told Abram just to get up and move out of your country. Would you do that? Would I do that? Tell him to go from your father's house and to leave your father, leave your family. So think about what Abram's been told to do here now. Talk about acting on faith based in God. Leave your country. Leave your father's house. Leave your family. And you don't know where you're going. You're going where I'm going to show you where to go. You don't know where that is yet. That's quite a challenge. Now, one little verse. Leave your country. Leave your family. And I'll let you know when you get there where you're going. That's a lot of faith to get up and move and go. So to move into chapter 12, we're going to see 3 promises made to Abraham after he arrived in the land of Canaan. The nation's promise, the seed promise, and the land promise. And we'll go through those in the next few verses here and talk about. Get those 3 promises well established in your mind: nation, seed, and land. And we'll see those and talk about fulfillment comes out there. They're way down the road here, way off. Before we see the fulfillment of all these, those are the 3 promises. So get into verse 2. Verse 2, God tells Abraham, I will make you a great nation. I'm going to make of you a great nation. And when at the end of Genesis, they go down into the land of Egypt. The statement is made. He tells Jacob to go there. I'll make you a great nation there. They actually became a nation in the land of Egypt during that bondage time there. Think about it. I like to use this verse here. This is after they arrived over at Mount Sinai. Now left Egypt. Think about it ahead a little bit here. They left Egypt and they've gone out of Mount Sinai, where they're assembled there, and then we're going to get the instructions for the tabernacle, get the law given to them, the covenant given to them, the priesthood set up. So, and he says it there, if you look at one phrase down there, yes, I'm here. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. When they get down to Mount Sinai, now they have become this nation that God's promised Abraham here. So God tells Abraham, I'll make you a great nation. Abraham didn't see that. But through his seed, a number of years later, probably looking at 400, 500 years down the road here. What this time happens here in Exodus chapter 19. Which is that you're to be a holy nation, a special people. Also in chapter 17, he says, I'll make you a father of many nations. Verse 2 here says, Genesis 12, I'll make you a great nation. Later on he says, I'll make you a father of many nations, plural. Look at the difference, think about that. And we'll talk about that in a minute a bit more. Make you a great nation, father of many nations. Verse 3 says, we get into the seed promise now. That's the nation promise. Seed promise is in verse 3, where he says, I'll bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. Forget the blessing for a minute. Let's talk about that little thing there a minute. How would you like it to God to tell you, I'll bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you. I'm going to take care of you. You do what I want you to do. You obey me. You have that faith as you demonstrated here. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. That's pretty good protection. That's pretty good benefit. Think about having from God. But he goes on to tell him, the point we're looking at here is, and you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. All the families of the earth will be blessed through you. Now, how's that going to happen? Just through Abraham. It's through Abraham's seed as he goes down through, all the way down through, when you trace the generations, all the way down through from Abraham to Christ. Christ is that blessing. Remember back in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the promise we had made there about the seed to come and crush the head of Satan. It's another promise here. 3:15 is what we need to know. Genesis 12, first 7 verses need to know these promises here. So in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. That is, through your seed, through your posterity, the verse here says, I'll be blessed. The gospel will be preached throughout the world, and numerous blessings will come to arrive with mankind, the death intersection of Christ. So it's the Christ lineage that we're looking at here to get down to that. Then here's the verse I have mentioned earlier about all the nations be blessed. It's a combination of nation promise and the seed promise. Galatians chapter 3. Scriptures foresee that God would justify the Gentiles by faith. Preach the gospel. We'll come back to that phrase in a minute. Preach the gospel to Abraham before, way back before, saying, in you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So we get the plural blessing here. The blessing of all the nations. Not just I'll make you a great nation, the nation of Israel, physical blessing, but then the blessing of all the nations there. And there's a phrase here that says, think about this, foresee that God would justify the Gentiles by faith. Preach the gospel to Abraham. How was the gospel preached to Abraham? What does gospel mean anyhow? Think about preaching the gospel. What are we preaching? The good news about Christ. So the gospel was preached to Abraham. What did God tell Abraham about? The seed promise. He's telling me exactly what's going to happen here. He preached the gospel to Abraham. Now, what detail we don't know, but he made this promise to Abraham that through you all the nations of the earth will be blessed. He told Abraham that through his seed, this blessing was coming. The good news about Christ was coming. Now, exactly what he told him, how much he told him, we don't know, except the fact he made this promise to him. That through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And that's all the nations. Not just the nation of Israel, but the blessings that come in through Christ. He preached the gospel of good news to Abraham. All right. We got those two promises made. The nation promise and the seed promise in verses 2 and 3. Now we get a little bit about Abraham moving. He leaves Haran, and he's 75 years old. Takes Sarai, his wife, with him. Lot, his nephew, is with him. And they come on down now to Canaan. And we'll look at the maps here in a minute and see this. So they've gone up from Ur, up Euphrates River Valley to Haran, and then now down into Canaan. They stop at the city of Shechem. Up here and see some of that. So there's Ur, way down in the Mesopotamia Valley, up to Haran, and down into Canaan then. Map in your mind there. And then we're going to start focusing now on this little section down here. We'll get some excursions back out to different parts, into Egypt and back to the Mesopotamia Valley here a little bit later on to go through the book of Genesis. But our main focus now is going to be this little land of Canaan down here, this promised land that's going to come here next in these next few verses, which is verse 7. So we get the nation promise, then the seed promise. Now in verse 7, we get the land promise. So Abraham has come down into this land. Abram has come into this land. And God comes to him and says, to your descendants, I will give this land. So this is where I wanted you to go when I told you to leave and go. This is the land I was going to give you. Now, what's significant about this being named the land of Canaan and the Canaanites living here? How does that tie into some things we've already talked about back in history a little bit? Where Canaan has come from as far as the sons of Noah. Son of Ham. What did Ham do to Noah? After Noah was dropped in his tent. Remember that? When he saw his father's nakedness, cursed the Canaan, his son Ham, because of that. And you look through the things were made, there's comments made about that, and it's that the sons of Shem, the descendants of Shem, would rule over or conquer these other people here. So the Canaan's going to be cursed and driven out of their land because of that. Go back to that promise of Noah here. Think about this land promise here. It was given to Abraham. We jump way ahead again to Joshua, the end of the book of Joshua. We see this is fulfilled, and we'll get to that later on, of course, in the study here. But if we go on past the Egyptian bondage, the Exodus coming out, the wandering in the wilderness, and they're ready to win and conquer the land, and they do conquer it then under Joshua's leadership. And this verse here is the climax of them getting this land that God promised Abraham here. Joshua 21, verse 43, the Lord God gave to Israel all the land which he has sworn to give to their fathers. And fathers there, plural, going to see the same promises made to Abraham about the promises of the seed, the nation, and the land, repeated to Abraham, and also repeated to his son Isaac and to his son Jacob. So they made all three of these patriarchs had these same promises made to them. This promise here was completed as they went in and conquered the land. So the nation promises fulfilled it at Sinai, and then the land promise at the end of Joshua, and then the seed promises, well, in the New Testament. So here's the land of Canaan. We got several maps we'll see as we go through here this morning. Here's the land of Canaan, and we'll point out 2 or 3 cities particularly. He came down to Shechem first, which is up here in the middle of the country, up here. Take note of Bethel. My dot, please still. Bethel here is Jerusalem. Jerusalem comes into play in the next lesson, Wednesday night's lesson. Just slightly here. There's Jerusalem, top of the Dead Sea. Beersheba is way down here in the south part. Those are the kind of 3 cities we'll see into play today and coming into Wednesday night, some more there. So Shechem in the middle up here, Bethel, and then Beersheba down here in the south. This is the land that he promised Abraham in chapter 12, verse 7. So the last part of that same verse 7 then, says that Abraham built an altar there. He's in Shechem now. Built an altar there and worshiped God. Then if you go one verse further, he moves to Bethel. We just saw Bethel on the map there, coming down more in the center of the land, just slightly above Jerusalem. And only one verse later, in verse 8, what Abraham do again? Built an altar there and worship God. So you see this little pattern going through here. There it is. Verse 8. Built an altar there in Bethel and worship God there. So same thing in Shechem, and now again in Bethel. So a couple more maps here, some land. This Shechem we saw a minute ago up here. Here's the very top of the Dead Sea down here, the Jordan River Valley down here. This map actually shows some of the mountainous type things here. Top of the Dead Sea, here's Jerusalem, referred to as Salem here, which we'll see next lesson. And coastal plain, of course, Mediterranean Sea's over here. And here's Bethel and Ai. We're going to find Abraham pitched his tent between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And so that's where that is. Come right on down a little further down here and get to Shechem. It's off to Beersheba down in the south part. See that just in a minute later on. But here, Shechem's up here, and Bethel and Ai here. You can where Jerusalem is for reference down here on the maps. So, there's a Bethel. Then it moves on to the south, to the Negev, N-E-G-E-V, N-E-G-E-V. You'll see it in some places there. South on going, it's going down through the land. Shechem, Bethel, a couple of down to the Negev to the south. And there's a famine in the land. So let's look at that thing. This is a map. It's the desert part. Now here's Beersheba, we just talked about. Bethel and Ai is up here, Shechem up the top. Here's Beersheba. Here's the Dead Sea over here, right at the very top up there with going across to Jerusalem. But what you see on this map, this is the Negev. It's this desert, deserted wilderness land down here, down to the south of the land. So it's a land where nobody lives that much, dry, barren, dusty. Here's a picture, a more modern day picture of it. You still see some of the dryness, the desert, wilderness part of it there. Again, more modern type picture here. So it's got some cultivation things going on. But not a land you want to travel in and be in if you're like Abraham, moving around like he is with a nomad that much. So, famine in the land, verse 12, coming down through Genesis chapter 12 and verse 10. It's a black famine. So he goes down to Egypt. Abraham is. It's way off down this way down here. Get to Egypt. And he's with Sarai's wife, Lot, his nephew. It says Abraham makes a request of Sarah. What do you ask him to do? Say you're what? Say you're my sister. Well, why did he want that? What's he afraid of? Afraid of his life. They're going to kill it. Okay. And we'll see a slide. It's not uncommon at that time for a king, a monarch, a absolute authority type figure that they had ruling the country. We don't have that we're familiar with. To take what he wanted, including wives, including women. So Sarah is very beautiful. One verse says she was very beautiful woman. Abraham feared for his life. He asked her to tell them, "You're my sister," so they wouldn't kill him to get her. Jumping way ahead, Abraham uses the same thing again later on. He didn't learn it the first time with Abimelech. And from this verse, we learned that she really was his half-sister, the daughter of his father, but not the daughter of his mother. So she's half-sister. So the question, I guess, here is, Abraham telling a half-truth or a half-lie? Halfway the truth. She was his sister. It's not all the truth. Wrong impression. It was totally deceived. You've been sworn in for something. You promise to tell the truth. What? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Well, Abraham didn't tell the whole truth. He told half the truth. So it was certainly wrong. So the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And the point here that I mentioned earlier, it was not uncommon at that time for these kings just to take these unmarried women, and she would be unmarried if she was Abraham's sister, not his wife. Unmarried women into their harem there. How many wives Solomon had, things like that further down here. And even though a brother or a father might deplore what was going on, he just kind of had to keep his mouth shut because that's just the way it was. After all, if he is the absolute ruling king, and you rebel against him taking your sister, what's he going to do to you? Same thing Abraham was worried about him killing him. So it's a royal right that's not resisted or questioned. So that kind of gives an idea as to why Abraham was worried about this. It's not like this, she's just my sister. And so what, he was actually fearful. He was fearful for his life. Abraham's treated well because his sister now is part of Pharaoh's harem, one of his wives here going to be. And so he's treated well. But not so for the Egyptians. One translation says diseases came upon them. Another translation says plagues came upon them. Pharaoh and his life. So Pharaoh then, because of this, learned the truth about who she really is. And so he tells Abraham to take your wife, gives it back to her, and sends them away out of Egypt. Now, when we start talking about this part here, I want to back up, way back up. On your questions, go back to number 3. We didn't talk about this. I meant to stop and do it. Go back and do it now. There's a word that's in verse 1. Now the Lord had said to Abram. Some translations don't have that word had in there. The Lord said to Abram, the Lord had said to Abram. So the point I was getting to in this verse here, question 3, is if you look down to these different things here, trying to figure out when did God tell Abraham to get up and leave Ur? It already happened before he got to Haran in verse 1 here. The Lord had been there. He had said to Abraham, versus he had called him when he was actually in Haran up there to go. Look at these other verses here. Chapter 11, he had already taken his grandson Lot and Sarah and Abram and went from Ur up to Haran. Chapter 15, verse 7 says, I'm the Lord who brought you out of Ur to give you this land for the inheritance here. So God did call him out of Ur, not out of Haran. So God called him from there. 24:7, Lord God of heaven, who took me from my father's house, land of my family, spoke to me and swore me, saying to your descendants, I give this land. Said his angel before you, take your wife, your son there. When you send him back to get a son for a wife for Isaac. Then jump way on down to Acts when Stephen's being about to be stoned. He's preaching, and he's recounting this whole Jewish history down through here. And he said, the God of glory appeared to our father Abram when he was in Mesopotamia, before he got to Haran. So God called Abraham from Ur, but then he goes up to Haran, where his father dies. He leaves there and comes down to the land. So you look at the word had in there. When they're in Genesis 12:1, they're already in Haran. So God had called him out of Ur before he got up to Haran. See the implication there. I said some translations leave that word had out of there. That's why I want to talk about that just a minute. I'm sure that's confusing to everybody, but you don't have that word in there. It looks like he called him from Haran and not from Ur. Okay. I think I've left out chapter 12 so far. Someone I want to talk about. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sometimes we put, and certainly people like Abraham deserve to be on a pedestal, but not from too high of a pedestal because they're human. They're going to make mistakes. Abraham made a mistake. He lied. He didn't have a confidence in God that God would take care of him and make it. He had no children this time. So how's God going to make a great nation out of you? And Abraham believes that later on because he knows that if he kills Isaac, he's still going to get him back to make that great nation in some form. That's later on here. At this point here, he could die without having a great nation made from him because he had no seed at this time, no children. So that faith was there. So let's talk about Abraham's faith a little bit and our faith a little bit. We got a few minutes left. We looked at Hebrews 11, verse 8. I'll flip over to chapter 11 of Hebrews, so we'll be for a couple of minutes here. We looked at verse 8 Wednesday night when they kind of introduced Abraham here, where he says, by faith Abraham obeyed who was called to go out of the place which he would receive as an inheritance, went out not knowing where he was going, which ties right back into what we talked about in chapter 12 here this morning. He left, family left his own country, didn't know where he was going, he went. And that's what Hebrews 11:8 is saying. But let's go on down and look at the next one of that. Verse 10 gets into it here. By faith he dwelt in the land of promise. It's in a foreign country. It was in a foreign country. Dwelt in tents, Isaac and Jacob. Again, as I said earlier, the promise was being made to them later on too. Heirs with him of the same promise. He waited for the city whose had foundations, whose builder and maker was God. How do you think Abraham acted when God told him to get up, to leave his country, to leave his family, and go to the land I'm going to show you? Well, let me think about that a while. See if that's what I really want to do. That was really best for me and my family. That's where I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Sure. So, what's your reaction? Get up and leave your country. Leave your family. Leave your father's house. And go somewhere, and I'll let you know when you get there where you're going. This commentator here says that there's no indication that Abraham wasted any time when he turned to the useless reasoning about what am I going to do. It's just all we have told us in the Bible is he went. God said, come, go, and he went. Implicit faith, promise of God, prompt obedience to his commands becomes us. You know what God tells us to do. We have that faith that Abraham had. And we do what God tells us to do. Like those promises we talked about Wednesday night. We travel by faith that works through love and leads to the paradise of God. This guy, his comments here for this one. So think about our faith. I like it. I'm good. Thank you, Mike. Leave it right into my next slide, Mike. I appreciate it. We're on the same track. That's good. All right, last part of Hebrews 11, verse 10 said Abraham was looking for a city. What Mike's talking about here. A city whose what? Builder, who has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. As far as we know, did Abraham ever live in a facility, a house that had foundations? What did he live in? A tent, okay? It's a tent. So when he's looking for a house with foundations, what's that like compared to a tent? Permanency, okay? That's exactly the word I'm looking for. Permanency. Abraham he moved up and down all through the land, constantly on move. He had no permanent dwelling place there. But he's looking for one. He's looking at one of the foundations, something that's solid he can hang on to. And who's going to build this one? God is. Okay. So Abraham's faith is not just going to that land he's going to, didn't know where it was. He's going to another land. And that's not living in tents and moving about this time. This city has got a foundation. There's Mike Rivers from the Book of Revelation. It's got a foundation. God is its builder and its maker. And the last slide on the slide down there said he lost sight of his earthly things, looking at what? For heaven, the heavenly view. Now, how does that apply to us? From Luke chapter 9. He said, if anyone desires to come after me, do we? Let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Now, let's think of one more verse by itself and compare it to what Abraham did. What did Abraham do? God says, get up and go. Come follow me to the land. I'm going to show you where it is. What did Abraham do? God went. As far as we know, there's no question. There's no thinking about it. He got up and went. So, if we're going to follow God, we're going to desire to come after him, put here. What we're going to do? We're going to do what it takes to get there. We have a desire to save his life. That's the phrase look at here. I'm going to save my life. I'm going to lose it. Lose his life for Christ's sake. We'll save it. After all, the next verse is a very familiar one. What we gain if we gain the whole world, lose our own soul, right? Lost and destroyed. None. So, the question I ask here, in the next verse we're going to slide here in a minute. What does it mean to be ashamed of Christ? What does it mean to look at the world instead of God and what he wants to do? Whoever's ashamed of me and my words is the very next verse after 23, 24, 25, this is 26 now. Same context. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes in his glory, with his Father and holy angels. So, go back up here one more time. Anyone desire to come after me? So if you look at this verse and look at 26, if you come after me, you're going to follow me, you're going to do what I say, you're going to gain the world, gain your life, you're going to save your life, versus that you're going to be ashamed of me. You don't come after me and follow me. And if you're ashamed of me, what's going to happen at the end then? God's going to be ashamed of you when he comes with his angels and all his glory. So, my question, are we guilty? Do we hesitate? When God tells us what to do, gives us a command, do we step out, reach out beyond our comfort zone here by faith? Abraham get out of his comfort zone? Yeah, just a little bit. Do we ever step out beyond our comfort zone? Or we're in that nice little comfort world here. Here's what I do. See something God wants us to do. A challenge, a new challenge. Do we step out? Reach for it. I've been on the treadmill this morning, and the only thing that came to my mind, the Lord, was faith of our fathers. I don't know why it's on top of my mind, but I just kept going to the words of faith of our fathers. I guess it's less in mind. Think about the faith of Abraham. That's the song I had on here. Here's what I was thinking about. I did this lesson stuff here. Remember this song here? All of self, none of thee. That's how the verse starts out. And then we go to a little gradual change here. Some of self and some of thee. Less of self and more of thee. Get down to another self and all of thee. So, think about Abraham and his choice. God said, Abraham, get up and go. And he did. And we're going to say Abraham's faith more times as we go through the book of Genesis here. But let that come to a challenge for us in our faith. If God gives us a challenge. Let's reach out there by faith and grab it. Any comments? That's all I've got. All right, one more. Go ahead. Right. adopted sons. Yeah, okay. Yep. We don't think about the relationships of these people way back then, how it applies on down through the scripture. But Shem, Ham, and Japheth all played into that. And the sons of Joseph, sons of Jacob later on, and different things that happened to them too. A similar time. Okay, bell wrong or time for some. Thank you. 13 and 14 for Wednesday night, chapters 13 and 14. You'll read them a couple of times, be good. Thank you.